supports this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mike Sabin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pleasure to take a call in this second reading of the Child Support Amendment Bill, and just acknowledge the previous Speaker and the Select Committee work that's gone on. It's fair to say that it has been a challenging bill to work on because of the complex nature and administrative nature of this bill, which commenced back in the Act itself commenced back in 1992. Is that right, Mr. Yeah, 1992. Just correcting my facts there, sir. There was some comments made by opposition speakers, sir, about this disappointment that they felt that this legislation didn't enshrine the notion of children being at the heart of this legislation, that it wasn't explicitly stated in the legislation. The reason for that, sir, and it was well traversed, was because it is implicit in this legislation that children are at the heart of what is essentially an administrative tool to ensure that where parents can't agree, separated parents can't agree on childcare and payment arrangements, that this can be achieved by way of legislation. That will never be an easy undertaking, sir, and I would submit that while there is indeed many complexities to this legislation and getting that formula right, it is first and foremost about administration, and it is dealing with human complexities far more so than this formula could ever be. But at its heart, it is about ensuring that parents can make arrangements that are in the best interests of their children. Mr. Speaker, sadly, there are many families that can't make those arrangements in an amicable manner, and some 220,000 children are subject to child support arrangements. And this legislation really fundamentally drills down on some important changes that are occurring. I just want to briefly traverse those. Firstly, with relation to the formula and a greater recognition of shared care in modern New Zealand, sir. We live in a dynamic environment now where it seems that more than 50% of couples are separated and children living in blended environments. Many of them succeed and do well in this environment, but this legislation needs to reflect that complexity. Secondly, there's updating the scheme to more better recognise significant daytime care, because it is the case now that mothers and fathers have different care and working arrangements, and the involvement of fathers is increasing more so as the years go on, and I think that's a very positive thing and something that should be acknowledged, that fathers are playing a greater role in the upbringing of their children. The third thing, Mr. Speaker, is that it really looks at some improvements around payments, penalties and debt. $2 billion worth of debt accrued in the scheme, some 60% by way of penalties. So while the best of intentions in this legislation when it was first drafted, much time has moved, and unfortunately, as we see, we often get anomalies which not only have a human cost to them, but a financial cost to them, and that's being addressed in this bill also, sir. I just want to briefly cover off and close on a point about the fact that this bill is setting about to be more equitable in terms of the thresholds of care and the shared care arrangements, and lowering that threshold to 28% as opposed to 40%. And myself, having been personally in a situation to be affected by this, I think this is a very, very sound move. And also it takes into account the actual expenditure of raising a child, although as has already been canvassed, teenagers would have one spend considerable amounts of money on their what do they call these androids and textbooky Facebook things and all these devices where you swipe your finger across it and strange things happen. But the Minister to my left, I'm sure, could elaborate further on that one. But, Mr. Speaker, in closing, I just want to say that what this bill is setting out to achieve, and make no mistake about it, no one says this is simple or that you'll get the balance right for every single person, but it's about fairness, it's about more reflecting New Zealand society today, and it's about better outcomes for parents who ultimately are struggling to reach amicable arrangements. First and foremost, Mr. Speaker, what we should be doing in community is trying to support the sort of values that ensure that where things go wrong in relationships, that those parents are working to make their own arrangements and support the interests of their children. Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to commend this bill to the House. Thank you.
Dr. Rajan Prasad.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm also pleased to speak in the second reading of this